All right, welcome everybody. So glad to be here with you talking about how to augment our immune system. And we are here hosted by Truly Organic with Jana, and I am so excited to be getting started on this. So let's do a segment of this presentation and come back for some shares or questions in a moment. So again, here with Truly Organic, tx.com with Jana's spa, which is absolutely beautiful. So that website's along the top. You guys can go visit it anytime you like. I'm Catherine Hansen, obstetrician gynecologist, and I will share a little bit more about me as we go along. I work with the Empowered Women Circle. We strengthen our body, elevate our mind, nurture our soul. We are a wellness movement for women. And here we are also augmenting your immune system. Just being cautious that this is not medical advice. If you have specific medical questions, definitely see your healthcare provider. You can reach out to me if you're not sure where to go or how to get the help you need. I am happy to help you in that regard, but this is not meant to be medical advice. I am not an ID expert. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, but I will tell you that what I dug out of the dusty shelves for this presentation was a book that my daughter told me this morning looked really, really old, but as old as me, The Pathogenesis of Infectious Disease. And I am not going to give you the info in here, but I really wanted to make sure that a lot of what we're talking about was backed up with that science. This is rapidly changing information. What I'm telling you is accurate as of today, and that's all I can say. Two things to note: fear and panic are not going to help us, but being informed and prepared is going to help not just us, but everybody else bring back that level of normalcy. So two factors impact our susceptibility to an infection: the seed and the soil. Essentially, the seed is the organism. So what we're talking about specifically now, we're talking about a viral organism, COVID-19, but we can be talking about any organism. What is going to determine our susceptibility? It's going to be what happens with that organism. How does it adhere? How does it impact our body's immune responses? So we use phagocytes to get to encompass. They're kind of like little vacuum cleaners. They take the organism and they try and get it out of our body. It's called phagocytosis. And some organisms can inhibit that, called anti-phagocytic. Some organisms will produce toxins, which can cause all kinds of effects in our body, and viruses specifically can mutate. That's why influenza can change season to season, and the flu shot changes a little bit each year. Viruses can absolutely mutate, and that will determine how they affect our body. And that's the seed, and we are the soil. So how does that seed get planted into the soil? That's our body. Various things that impact our susceptibility, things like genetics, race, ethnicity, things like age, socioeconomic status, how tightly we're confined. I was talking with Jana at the beginning about being in close proximity to other people. That kind of thing can impact our susceptibility. And gender: males tend to be a little bit more susceptible than females. Females tend to be able to mount a higher response, IgG and IgM, which are the things we need to basically, they're the antigens that take they're the antibodies that take the antigens of the virus away. And women do a little bit better at that. I have to say, we do a little bit better at a lot of things. Sorry, Dr. Hamid. And we have a stronger cell-mediated immunity response. Now, it's not a lot different, but in general, females can do a little bit better at those things. We're probably exposed to a lot more things too, just by where we live our lives and who we interact with. The other things that that make us more susceptible as the soil or the host are hormonal factors and stress. And I like this little picture. It is directly out of this little old antiquated book. But it gives you an idea that what's happening in your body in terms of receptor, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, what we see, those kinds of things can result in that fight or flight response, which ultimately also what we're thinking. Are we panicking? Are we in fear? That can all lead to stresses which go through the brain, the limbic system, hypothalamus, pituitary. That's all in the brain. And this piece about food, we get a lot of our information about nutrition, which is what the bulk of this presentation is going to be about. And we get a lot of that information from starvation research. So basically, when we don't have what we need, what does our body become susceptible to? And once it goes through the brain, it goes to the adrenal gland, which has the cortex and medulla. Ultimately, we end up with all those neurotransmitters, cortisol we've all heard about, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and we can get respiratory effects, we can get tissue effects, muscle effects, all of those things that happen. And what we're focused on in this presentation is the inflammatory and or the immune response. So how is nutrition related to that immune response? And we're going to bring those together as we go. What are some underlying conditions that can impact how our body fights infection? Hydration, really important, and seems such a subtle, small thing, but it's so, so vital to stay hydrated. Certain lung conditions, what's going on in the air, the pollution. So in general, if you can think about it, if our liver and our organs are busy kind of taking up all the garbage in our body from air pollution or from pesticides or from preservatives, then the organs, the liver specifically, is not going to be able to help us with this pathogen, with this virus or bacteria or whatever it is we're talking about. Fatigue also inhibits our response, as well as too much exercise. So exercise is good, and I'm going to come back to that. Really important that we stay on top of our physical health, but too much can create a lot of inflammation in the body and ultimately inhibit our immune response. Changes in temperature. So if our body is busy trying to stay warm, it's not going to have what it needs to fight off infection. Smoking, drugs, alcohol, anything we're putting in our body that our liver and our organs are needing to sop up will ultimately remove the reserve that is needed for our body to fight a potential pathogen or virus. So nutrition is one of those things that our body, as the soil or the host, has to really be considering in terms of our ability to mount an immune response or to fight off an infection. And bringing it down to the level of where are those defenses? Essentially, we have the integrity of the skin and mucous membranes impacted by vitamin A, B, and C. So those are our defenses, as well as our cells. So needing protein in order to be able to mount an immune response. With proteins, our body actually needs proteins to, I'm just going to ask you guys to mute yourself if you're not muted, just so that I don't have the scratchy sound. And you unmute if you want to throw in some comments, go right ahead. But in terms of what our body needs protein to do, it needs protein to build those antibodies, the IgG and IgM and the cell-mediated immunity I just talked about, essentially has protein as the building blocks. And then gut health, not just because we need our gut in order to absorb the nutrients, to do the things we want our body to do, but also because the gut is directly related to our ability to build the immune function and the immunity we need. This is an actual picture of dinner that I've made recently. And if you include every color of the rainbow, throw in some natural plants and some herbs and some fresh things from your garden, you're going to be getting a lot of those nutrients you need. So thinking about what you need: vegetables and fruits, whole grains, lean proteins, and targeted personal supplementation. What should you not be taking? Refined sugar or hidden sugars. Your body, it basically increases inflammation, and your body gets all wrapped up with trying to fight that inflammation, and it can't fight infection. Alcohol, we already talked about. Animal or saturated fats, also creating a lot of potential stressors to the body to try to manage those saturated fats as they're coming in. And prepackaged and pre-made foods, for all of the reasons we talked about, has things in it that your body has to get busy taking care of when we really want it focused on taking care of the infection. So can I get enough of these things in my food? I showed you the big colorful fruits and vegetables that we ate. We know, I've already mentioned so far in this talk, vitamin A, B, C. I don't know if I mentioned D, but I'm coming around to that. Zinc and protein. Can you get enough in your food? Well, let me just share. Oh, my dog's going to go a little bit nuts here. Oh, now he's going to come say hi. Can you get enough in your food? Actually, even when we try to eat healthy, we know that the Western diet is considered what we call a standard American diet. It's a sad diet. I'm sorry, my dog's going to be chatting here with us. Animal studies show us that when we give a group, these are animal studies, but when we give a group high fat and high sugar, oh, I'm sorry. Just give me a second here with the dog. So with the standard American diet, we probably don't need to do animal studies because we're all generally eating standard American diet. But with animal studies, they gave them high fat and high sugar, which models our current diet. And what did they find? They found impaired brain function, inability to learn, poor memory, those kinds of things immediately. And sometimes when I go on like a trip with my kids, I think, oh, it's just a short trip, not a big deal. What does it really matter if we eat out for the week we're away? They found these effects in as little as 5 days, and even before any weight changes started to occur. So even in a short time, we need to be thinking about the food we're putting in and whether it has those nutrients in it that we need. So ultimately, we're looking at trying to provide you today with some really solid solutions. And so I'm going to show you how to get the nutrients that you need, but I want to start out by saying the protein is also an option with ID Life, which we're going to be talking about. And there's also a vegan option for protein, really healthy protein or meal replacement. It's got only 7 ingredients, and I'll dig into that as you guys would like to ask questions. Slim Plus is a prebiotic. So when we talk about needing protein, we talk about gut health. There's many solutions that ID Life is offering us for those things. Every person's regime is going to include really high quality probiotics, again, for gut health. So prebiotics, probiotics, protein, all these things are available to us. But the big question for today, if I need supplements, how do I get what I need in those supplements? And I want to be really perfectly clear. There is no remedy that is going to prevent you from getting a virus like COVID-19. So there's nothing that's going to stop COVID-19 from you basically contracting after contact with that virus. There's no essential oil, there's no specific supplement, there's no food group, there's no meditation practice. Nothing can stop that. But what we're talking about today is making sure that your immune system is going to do what it needs with this or any other infection that you come in contact with. And I've spent a little bit of time over the last couple of weeks recording on antifragility. And ultimately what that means is as we come out of a stressor or a major crisis, can we emerge from that stronger, more resilient, more robust than we were when we went into it? And I feel very strongly that that's what's happening here is our population is realizing our physical health is vulnerable and precious. And if we can do anything to augment and make ourselves as healthy as possible, we are doing it now in this crisis. And I think this has been more than a wake-up call, not probably a bigger wake-up call than any of us needed, but we're going to emerge from this with a priority on our physical health like never before. So there's some good science behind all of the supplements or all of the nutrients we've mentioned so far: vitamin C, D3, zinc, and acetylcysteine. And I want to make sure you know that I have on my Facebook group, if you're on social media, if you're staying away from it, stay away from it. But if you're on it, Catherine Hanson, MD, like or follow, because I'm posting in there the very specific factoids that are coming through the medical news on not just immunity, but also COVID-19 and a lot of other things. This is a research article that was brought to my attention, and it very specifically targets vitamin C, D, and zinc. And there was another one recently that targeted N-acetylcysteine as nutrients that we need or that our immune system needs in order to build the building blocks to fight infection. I'm going to show you some specifics on how we get those things. So this is one of my previous, because I constantly update my health assessment, this is one of my previous regimes through the ID Life Health Assessment, and I am going to show you how to get to that, that has N-acetylcysteine there and glutathione. Again, N-acetylcysteine converts to glutathione, which is ultimately essential for the immune system. There's so many other things in here. You can see in there also the probiotics that are in there. You can see where it says tocotrienols, that's a real high quality natural vitamin E. You can see turmeric in there. You know, just have a quick peek through that. And that's only half of what's in my regime. So what I'm going to do right now is stop share. I'm going to take you right over to the internet for a minute. Welcome to anybody that's joined us as we've been chatting. I'm going to take you right over to the internet to show you a couple of things that, let's see how I get there. A couple of things that you may or may not be aware of. So first of all, since we're doing this in conjunction with Jenna at Truly Organic, this is her website, trulyorganictx.com, and all of her services and contact information and everything is up here on the top tabs, as well as the phone number. And I want to make sure you know how to get to Jenna, and she's here, so she'll be sharing with us whatever she would like to add to that. I want to go over here as well. Let's get rid of that for a second. I have to move the little bobbleheads all over the place here. I want to make sure, let's go back to, oh, here it is. Sorry about the popping sounds. Okay, so this is my assessment, and assuming it hasn't timed out on me, I want to show you, if you do your health assessment, oh, it has timed out. So give me a second here. Let me just, so here's a good example of tech, of my tech prowess, Jenna. Just give me a minute. I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to and bring you over here. So all of you who have done your health assessment can have a look. And just so you know where I came to this, I'm going to take that down. So you're going to do your health assessment. I go in and do mine very regularly. You can download your full health report. But if you click View Supplement Facts, we talked already about the science behind vitamin A. You can see vitamin A here in two forms, vitamin C, vitamin D3, just looking over here on the left, vitamin E. All of these are B vitamins, all in your regime. And everybody can do this. You can get your regime, you can look at what's recommended for you, you can print it off, you can take it to any drugstore, and I'm going to come back to that point in a minute. Magnesium, manganese, and here's the zinc. So another proven nutrient to help with immune function is zinc. So there you go. You have to make sure that you have a good quality zinc. And then we've talked a little bit already about, here we go with the probiotics right here, and then N-acetylcysteine. Just want to make sure you are aware that all of that is in your regime. So let's come back, and I'm going to stop sharing and ask you guys at this point if anybody has any questions, if Jana wants to talk about her spa for a minute, anything there. And then I'm going to go back and walk us through different quality and how you know whether you're getting the right quality in your supplement program. Anything, Jana?
No. I was really wanting you to like help educate everyone just on health, wellness, and immunity. So you're doing great, because everyone's just scared and everyone's searching for information. And so you offering to do this for people who are like searching for answers was incredible. So I truly appreciate you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
I have a question.
Please do, Laura. Go ahead.
You said you're constantly updating your assessment. Why are we doing that?
So I update my assessment, first of all, with every season, because every season is going to change. For the most important thing it's going to change is our sun exposure and our vitamin D. We know that 75% of the population is vitamin D deficient. In fact, in Canada, they don't even measure vitamin D anymore. They make the assumption everybody needs vitamin D supplementation.
Okay.
And in order to absorb vitamin D, in other words, when your vitamin D dose changes based on your sun exposure, you need vitamin A, vitamin K, magnesium, manganese, boron, and zinc to absorb vitamin D alone. And that changes based on sun exposure, based on which season it is, those kinds of things. So the minimum you want to change it is every season. The other thing that, and I'll come back to Carolina's chat in a second. I'm not reading it right now, but give me one sec, Carolina. The other thing that's really important with updating your assessment is that your nutrient needs change, and in a lot of cases, they may decrease. So the beauty of, for example, ID Life, and it's not the only company out there, but the beauty of ID Life that they do this is that they're not giving you too much. So the right nutrient, the right dose at the right time of day ensures that you're not getting too much. And if, for example, you change the way you eat or you start implementing more vegetables in your routine and you update your assessment, it's going to reduce nutrients that you will be getting in your diet because you've changed your diet. If your weight changes, your supplement needs will change. If your sleep habits change, your supplement needs will change. All of that changes. I would propose 4 times a year is a good time to update. Anytime you have a medication change, anytime you have a season change, a health change, obviously, but also dietary changes, exercise changes, weight changes, stress changes, everything. What other questions do you have about that?
Thank you. You answered it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Let's have a look at Carolina's question. For a person who hasn't been taking vitamins, how long does it take for a person to respond with a boosted immune system? That's a fantastic question. So the water-soluble vitamins, so when you'll notice what I've mentioned as scientifically linked to our immune system, I like to think that all of our nutrients, you know me, I love the orchestra, the symphony of the body. The physiologic systems to me are this gorgeous complex machine. I think every nutrient is linked to those pathways. But the ones I've mentioned today so far, A, B, and C, with respect to skin and mucous membrane integrity, B vitamin is a water-soluble vitamin, which means that it's something you need to replace every day. Which means if you're deficient in vitamin B, it's going to be like a daily replacement. So will you respond if you haven't had vitamin D in several days and you replace it? You'll probably get a response almost immediately. But the other ones, A, D, E, and K, you guys don't need to remember these details, but in terms of how long it takes to respond, A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble vitamins, which means not only can they become toxic if you get too much, so ID Life ensures you don't, but also they're stored up. So if you have enough storage of those, you're not going to notice deficiencies in those for a little bit of time because they're stored in your fat and they're going to be accessible to your body for a little while. Now the red blood cells and white blood cells, and it's the white blood cells you need for your immune function, they turn over anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months. Red blood cells take 120 days, so that's 3 months to turn over. Versus, did I do the math right? Yeah. Versus white blood cells can turn over a lot faster. And if you're using up your white blood cells, so they're the front line fighting against an infection, you're using those up a lot faster, and they're gonna go into immediate production mode. So how do we know? How does a doctor know that you have an infection in your body? They know you have an infection because your white blood cell count starts to go up because your bone marrow starts making more white blood cells because it needs it in order to mount an infection. It's kind of like the machine. It's like supply and demand. It doesn't know how much your body's going to need, so it's going to produce more than it needs, and that's how we determine that there's an infection in the body, just by checking how many white blood cells your body's making. So I'm going, there's no, I know I'm kind of talking around that, but there's no clear answer to that. But in terms of water soluble vitamins, you're going to get a response right away. In terms of fat soluble vitamins, a little bit later. And in terms of I tell people, I think this is probably the answer you're looking for. I tell people you need at least 3 months on any change, on any regime, and for Laura's sake, on a regime that you leave stable for 3 months before you switch it. Your body's going to need at least 3 months in order to do what it needs to do with that regime. But you might notice results right away. And Elizabeth says, probably a good idea to get blood work done prior to starting. Oh, yeah, no, I didn't mention this, but no, so you absolutely don't need blood work done unless you're looking for a specific blood condition. So if you're a healthy person, the numbers, so a lot of people think they need to know their numbers. The numbers do not guide this. This is standard across the board. Everybody needs good, healthy food intake. Everybody needs targeted personal supplementation to meet the needs that we can't meet with our food. And as long as you're not, again, this is where it comes in dosing, as long as you're not overdosing on nutrients, and that's why we're talking about where to get your nutrients and what dosages to be taking and when to be taking them. As long as you're not overdosing on your nutrients, you absolutely don't need blood work to determine that. So Elizabeth, I'd be really curious what specific blood work you're talking about. Doctors are, in Canada, I think you're in Canada, doctors are not even allowed to test vitamin D anymore because everyone's deficient in vitamin D and everybody needs supplementation. Vitamin B is something vitamin B12 is something we can test, but I can assure you, because it's water soluble, most people need a vitamin B supplement. And I'm trying to think of other, maybe Dr. Hamid wants to help, but other nutrients that we specifically test in terms of, unless we go to higher end sort of Cadillac version tests, there's probably no need to know your numbers before you start supplementing. Hamid, do you want to weigh in on that fact?
Yes, actually, it's a good question to ask, and I battled with it in my clinic quite a bit. So here's what happened between traditional blood tests, where most medical doctors will test for serum blood test, versus the white blood cell test, where when we do a micronutrient testing specific to the vitamins, we're looking at what's going on inside the cell. So often we have patients that come in and say, I've done my regular blood test, which we all do when we go see our family doctor, and they said my B12 is normal. And then we do the micronutrient testing and we find that it's actually deficient. Neither one of us is wrong, is we were looking at it 2 different places. The important part is that vitamins needs to be inside the cell, and if it's circulating outside the cell, not making an entry, then it's not going to be beneficial. So in order to do a vitamin deficiency test, it's the best test lab out there will test for about 30 of them, because it is quite pricey, so they will not test for everything. So oftentimes with my patients, unless they really like data, we try to move away from testing, because the Idealife Health Assessment has taken over 10,000 clinical studies specific on that nutrition, and they've already done the testing. So we're mirroring basically conditions based on research already done. Now, and the other question, how long does it take for people to see a response? I have had patients within 5 to 7 days tell me I slept better, I had more energy. It doesn't mean that they're completely recovered. The curve goes at a higher pace, because every bit of those ingredients you're taking from the ID nutrition is being absorbed by the body and being utilized by the cells. So people will find a faster response. Now, it may not be always where you want it, but where the body needs it first. So that's where the 90 to 120 days come into place, because we got to wait for the red blood cells to turn over and then show us that it's actually doing what it's need to be done. Back to your comment, Dr. Hansen, is that the way I tell my patient, think about it this way. The more you drive your car, the more you're going to stop at a gas station and refill. So in terms of your vitamins, the more you use them up, the more you're going to need to replenish them. So it all depends on where your health condition is, what your stress in life is, what's going on. That's going to determine your need for more or less vitamins. And I don't know, Dr. Hansen, if you can go back and show them, you mentioned that we don't give the maximum dosage for a purpose, because oftentimes when patients come in and say, well, my doctor had told me years ago I need to take 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C. Yes, when you only take that and nothing else, but when you're taking a cumulative of different nutrients, we give the basic, but you have the ability to add more. And when you open a supplement fact, you guys could play with it at home. Is I often go to B complex because that seems to be a cool one to go to. For those who don't know, I'm a chiropractor, so I deal with a lot of back pain. So if you take one pill of B complex, you're going to see like 2 micrograms of B12, but you add 1 pill because you want to, and that jumps to 102 micrograms. So you have the ability to up, for example, we know B complex help a lot with back pain, among other things. Someone had asked, when do I need to go in? So if you're already on the ID nutrition and you came to my office, all of a sudden you have back pain, chances are I'm going to log in with you. We're going to look at your assessment and up your B complex, your L-carnitine. So these are times where we start adding or modifying your health assessment to that. So that's one of the cool thing about that. I know I answered a lot of questions at once, but hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. That was super helpful. I'm glad I gave you a chance to talk. So I needed that support and further elaboration. And so what I've done is, while you were talking, is I've shared it my personal assessment. So this is different for everybody, but I've shared it again because Elizabeth's point was really good. So let me sort of be clear. She is living in the US. She does have access to micronutrient testing, but in my practice, what I found is the same as what Dr. Cantera has just said, is that if I did micronutrient testing on people, it was extremely expensive and it gave them numbers on their nutrients, but it ultimately determined that they needed a nutrient regime, again, targeted and personalized to them, but they needed a nutrient regime anyways. So those numbers didn't alter anything in the end, and it was exceptionally expensive. So if we're talking about someone being concerned about a specific nutrient deficiency or a specific nutrient that's too high, that would be different. And Elizabeth's main question, or one of the things she was highlighting, was calcium. And our body has an incredible ability to regulate calcium. So that's not necessarily a number that we need unless we have symptoms of hypo, meaning too little, or hypercalcemia. And those kinds of things would become clinical conditions and clinical diagnoses, which, by the way, can be entered into your health assessment. But I want to show you what Dr. Cantera was just mentioning. For example, I have not added extra vitamin C to my regime. And so I'm trying to highlight the vitamin C here for you, just to show you that I'm getting what would be considered about 200 milligrams of vitamin C, whereas if you go take a vitamin C from the store, it's almost always 500 or 1,000. I don't need that much because I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. So I know that I'm getting a lot from my fruit. My B complex, and I'm scrolling by these fairly quickly because I've added extra B complex to my regime, so you can see that there's actually a fair amount of B in my regime, and that's a personal choice. I put those in especially. We also know that, and I think Elizabeth might have been alluding to this fact, you can take too much calcium, and I just want to show you my calcium. This is, again, my regime, and I have extra bone support in my regime, etc. But calcium is only about 30 to 40% of recommended daily allowance, meaning that I'm not even getting 100% of recommended daily allowance because it's in my, and there's more calcium down here, it's in my diet. And I prefer that. I prefer to know that it's not giving me too much of any one thing. So let me just, I know there's another question in the chat, but let me just stop the share so I can come back, because I think this dialogue is probably more valuable than anything else. How do you get everyone's numbers? Yeah, so no worries, Samantha. And I'm going to show you at the end how you can do your own personal, thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, and keep the questions coming. This is again more valuable than anything I can put together for you. I really need to know what you want to know. But at the end, Samantha, I'm going to show you where you can go to do a online free HIPAA protected health assessment that will ultimately give you your own downloadable report, which is about 10 pages of health information about you specifically that you can use for guidance for your diet, for your exercise, for your sleep, for your stress, for the hair products you use, whatever. It's a really valuable report, and it's going to give you the numbers that I was just showing you that were my numbers, and that will hopefully answer that question, and if not, we'll give you contact information so you can follow up. So keep those questions coming. I'll go back and continue. Actually, let me just ask Jana. Wait, how do I get out of here? Let me just ask Jana. Oh yeah, Jana's mentioning that's another reason why DNA is so important, because DNA can also guide, because remember genetics was a big determinant in what your body needs. DNA can guide you in terms of different nutrients. Some people, based on their DNA, based on their genetics, need more of some nutrients or less of others. But I just want to ask Jana, I am going into the second part of the presentation, and it's about supplement quality and bringing it back to how ID Life is meeting those supplement quality requirements. But is it something we want to do today, or should we take a break today, or are you feeling like that's enough for now, Jana?
Why don't we ask everyone to respond and see if it's something they want to hear about today, or maybe something they want to hear about next week. I mean,
yeah, that would be great. Do you want to put it in the chat? Like you have another, let's say 15 or 20 minutes for us. Tell me go. Otherwise we'll do it another time.
yeah.
And I can just keep dialogue going.
I know between DNA and nutrition, I think that there's a group of us on here that could talk forever.
Yeah. Laura says today is good.
It's super exciting.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I will just make sure, anybody, I think what we'll do is we'll continue, and I think we'll continue and we'll record it, and then anybody that can't, I'll record it as a separate segment. Anybody who has to go now, we can make sure you get this upcoming part in a recording.